Welcome back to the Change Physician Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Cady, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and I'm here with Dr. Vicki Chan, who's an ophthalmologist who has an incredible story of transition that we really want to hear a little bit more about. And first of all, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, looking forward to the story. So we always start from the beginning, and really, why is it you started the path or wanting to go into medicine in the first place?
Well, I think that part of the story is probably the most boring. I went into medicine partially because that was kind of all I knew. My dad was a physician, and it was just one of those things where, you know, whenever, since you're little, right? Like, what do you want to be? You're like, I want to be a doctor like dad, you know? And I guess it just kind of stuck. And I never really wavered from that. So I think the first part of my story is pretty typical, you know? Like, I saw what my dad was doing. I was impressed by all the people he was helping. He's actually also an anesthesiologist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he would get called away for emergency surgeries. He specialized in heart. He was actually, even before, I don't think he ever did a fellowship. It was back, you know, in the 70s, 80s, you know, where you just did it. And so he was a cardiac specialist because he was buddies with the cardiac surgeon. And so they always called him in for those. And he would bring me in once in a while to the hospital, and it was just kind of all I knew, you know, and my fate was set very early on.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like you were exposed to the option, you knew it was possible, and you kind of got an idea of what it was all about. So that kind of set the stage for you, it seems like.
Yeah. And I even went to a straight med program. So that was how set that was. So I went to an 8-year straight medical program.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So that was actually really great. I enjoyed that. I think, you know, when I talked to all my other pre-med friends, going to a straight year program was probably the best thing for me because you have less stress. And so I actually was able to enjoy college somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have to worry about that whole application process to get into that next phase.
I still did. Actually, I went to the one at University of Southern California. And so that one was, you didn't have to take the MCAT, but if you did, you could apply out. And so you kind of had that safety net. So we did all the steps, but you had the safety net where you could continue on at USC. And so I was lucky that I was able to apply out. And so I ended up not going to USC for med school, but I went elsewhere.
Oh, okay. I didn't know how that worked. That's actually, I never had applied to anything like that. So I do know some people like in Baylor College of Medicine, I think in Houston, people did things like that. Kevin?
Yeah. So you were set on your career path. So that makes that pretty easy. So when you hit medical school, and this will be kind of interesting because you grew up in a physician family. Well, actually that won't work because you were an 8-year program. So we have to skip ahead outside of medical school then a little bit and just say, did medical school and residency sort of fit your ideas of what a physician was based on your background? Or did you find any challenges now, like once you're in there, like maybe I didn't quite know as much as I thought about medicine, or when did you start thinking maybe this wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be from when I was little?
So I was, so that didn't happen until after I had kids.
Oh.
So I think, you know, it's kind of funny. Like I said, I was a pretty straight-laced, like straight A, like, you know, very focused. So very focused student, doctor, trainee, and all that stuff. So I was of the mindset where I would, you know, practice medicine until I died. You know, that was my mindset. I think that was my dad's mindset, right? That he was just going to practice medicine and grind it out and work hard. And that was the way it was. Interestingly, I met my husband in medical school. My husband does not have that mindset. My husband, even though he's a physician, is very much live for the day, live for the moment. If you guys know Peter Kim at all, he also goes by Passive Income MD. And we'd be in medical school studying, and he would legit be like, it would be so fun to have a restaurant. Like he would just say something like that. Or he'd be like, oh, hey, I have this idea for this invention. You know, and I remember being like, babe, like we need to focus and we need to graduate medical school and we can do all that other stuff later, you know? And so we were very of two mindsets. So I was very focused. He was a dreamer, and we graduated medical school and we kind of went on the track. We moved to Los Angeles. We both got our job. We both did fellowship. We both got our jobs. He was kind of immersed in his job as well. And then we had our daughter. And I think that was his, so when we had our daughter, he started dreaming again, like pretty soon after that. So he started getting into real estate. It was a lot of logistical stuff too. We were trying to buy our first house. And so he got introduced to, and so he started going down the real estate route, and it kind of just introduced him to that whole world of passive income and finance and real estate and blogging and all that stuff. So he started going down that route. I, on the other hand, was just busy being a mom and trying to juggle being a mother and being a full-time physician and just kind of handling that. And I think I hit my wall, so you're looking for that, when my daughter was about 1.5, and I was still working full-time. And again, like I said, I was going to work until I died, and I was going to be a team player and take the call and help out my colleagues and, you know, be a good doctor, all the while being very guilty I wasn't at home. You know, I wasn't at home. We had a nanny. And it hit me when my chief at the clinic I was working at, some stuff happened. He actually told me that he was not going to offer me a promotion because I should just stay at home and focus on my family. And it was much more complicated than that, but that was kind of the sense. And so what I realized in that moment was I was sacrificing my family for a job where I wasn't appreciated because of my family, right? You kind of get that, like, I don't know if you call that a double standard, but it was literally, I was stuck in between this rock and this hard place where it's like, I wanted both, but I couldn't have both. And I was sucking at both.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
And so that was my moment. And I remember in my car, I just pulled into my garage and I knew my daughter was waiting and she was 1.5. So she was still in like fussy, you know, and so I would have to feed her and get her ready for bed and all that stuff. And I knew I was walking into that circus, but I was just sitting in my car, just like crying, just, you know, this is it. This is my life, right? I just spent a whole day at work where I'm not appreciated, never gonna get promoted. And I'm gonna walk into this like circus chaos where I'm just so tired and I just want to get through it to go to bed so I can just do it all over again.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was my wall. That was the moment. Yeah.
Well, I have so many friends that sometimes I feel like they suffer silently with that dilemma as a mother and full-time physician. And even the ones that are part-time, I mean, it's still that sense of being away and feeling torn and not having, of all things, the flexibility to tend to whatever life throws at you, whether it's with including your kids or not. But, you know, I guess my thought is when you had that, which I think is what it takes, is sometimes the pain of the moment is what triggers us to reflect on what's most important. And so my question to you is where did you start looking or thinking or maybe discussing with your husband who had a creative outside the box thinking, where did you first go when you were thinking? How long did that process take?
You know, I would say it took about 6 months. And what's so funny is that, you know, I talk about that moment, but even in that moment, I didn't think I had any other option, you know, like you're in that moment and this sucks. But at the same time, I'm like, well, this is the life I chose. Right. So I'm gonna just suck it up and this is just how it's going to be. And, you know, poor me, you know, and my husband, thankfully, you know, like you said, is much more creative and much more supportive and all that. I mean, he would say things like, just go part-time. Like, this is fine. Like, we're fine. Don't worry about it. But I think the other part of it also is being a physician, there's pride, there's ego, and there's pride. And for me, I'm like, I'm not just going to go part-time. Like, I put all this time in, and what, you know, my colleague already thinks that I'm not worthy of a promotion. I go part-time now. I mean, they're totally going to look down on me. And, you know, so there's a lot of just that, you know, and then just finances, right? We, you know, we had a daughter, and, you know, I didn't want to go part-time. And then now my income would be halved, and, for, you know, so at home, then I felt guilty doing that as well, right? So just a lot of layers, you know, to all of it. And that just kind of, so that was about, I would say about 6 months. And my husband, you know, he is a serial entrepreneur. I mentioned some other things that he's done, but we do a whole bunch of different things. And he's one of those people where he'll try anything once. And he found out about this direct sales company. And he basically brought it to me. He's like, hey, I know some other, you know, female physicians who are doing this. You should probably look into it. For a while, I was like, there's just absolutely no way. Like, there's just, I mean, I'm already tired and busy, and like, you're about to like tell me to do something else, albeit from home. That was his idea, right? Like, oh, you can do it from home. Like, right. But, you know, there's just a lot of fear and just a lot of doubt there, you know, of like whether this would actually be possible. And then, you know, things happen, right? So more pain points, right? We got pregnant with our second. And then I'm like, oh my God, things are like literally about to get crazier. Okay. And then so then at that point, my eyes were open, and I started seeing other people doing other things. You know, there were doctors out there doing other things, including this direct sales business. And so I started just seeing, okay, maybe it's not impossible, right? There are other physicians, other physician moms doing this sort of thing. And so I finally, you know, went back to my husband, was like, okay, maybe you're not as crazy as I said you were. And I started my direct selling business about 5 years ago, and with the expectation that it would provide a little bit of income on the side, that I could take a Friday off, or that I could take a week, or I didn't have to take call anymore. Right. And at least that would relieve that burden of income. Right. But lo and behold, you know, fast forward, I've actually replaced my doctor's income. And so now I work per diem, like completely flexible on my own schedule. Yeah. I mean, It's been like a total, you know, I think back, and it's like a total 180, you know? Yeah.
So just a kind of clarification, when you're kind of, you had that moment, and you had that 6 months when you were really kind of struggling. When you started learning about direct sales and your husband presented that option, were you working part-time at that point, or was that before you were part-time? So you were like, I'm still full-time. I don't know what else I'm going to do, but I'm just going to hold on to this until something happens.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I really didn't think I have any other options. I mean, how I went part-time is interesting too, because, you know, you talk about the whole ego thing. Like, even after I started my direct selling business, I was making a decent sized income. I did stop taking call, you know, so I was able to do that at least. But I still couldn't go part-time. I couldn't, like, I couldn't pull that trigger, you know? I don't remember what it was. I don't know. You know, I just had to tell them, right? But I didn't, okay? And I didn't go part-time until we had our second, we had my son. I went on maternity leave. Unlike the first time, so the first time I went on maternity leave, I only took 6 weeks. And it was, in hindsight, crazy. But after my second, I had that mindset shift that, you know, there were other things more important than work. And so I took 4 months off with my second. And in that time, my clinic hired someone else. And so they basically called me and was like, hey, so we hired someone else, you know, enjoy your maternity leave. But when you come back, you're going to be part-time. And it was kind of forced on me. And in hindsight, obviously it was the best thing that could ever happen in my entire life. Like, I'm so grateful for that. But of course, in that moment, I'm like, oh crap. Like, I just, you know, you just have my income. And I remember like running to my computer and updating my CV and emailing people. And I had to literally stop myself and be like, what if this was a good thing? Yeah. You know, what if I could embrace this? What if I could just make this work? You know? And I did. Yeah. So I, you can't take back the CVs, but I stopped my search.
Yeah.
That's interesting though, because these two pivot points were really external influences. So, you mean the first one was really whoever the chief of your department or chief of your clinic basically saying, well, in a kind of, that would piss me off if I heard something like that, because that is a double standard for sure. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we're just going to hire somebody else and make you go part-time. And it's interesting because so many people, there's two ways you can take those external events like that. You could either become extraordinarily resentful and upset, and granted, everybody's going to get mad. But you've seen, you've kind of embraced that pivot, and now being able to see them as such a positive experience or a positive learning. And they may have been painful, but they were painful, positive experiences rather than painful, negative, dragging, anchoring experiences.
Oh, definitely. I think, in hindsight, there are a couple of the best things that could have happened to me, like when I retell that story, there's a lot of other details. I have friends like, you should have sued him. Like there's all these things that, I'm like, you know what? Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. Because it brought me to where I am today.
And do you feel like that the pivot, and I guess let's just go kind of where you went with it. You said direct sales, and I'm assuming you can describe kind of what that is and how maybe you feel in alignment with it. And if you don't want to just start there, then I have a couple questions probably.
Yeah. So direct sales, you know what, to be honest, before I started the company, it's called Radiant and Fields, I knew nothing about direct sales, like absolutely nothing. But what I've learned is it's direct selling. So instead of buying something from a middleman like Nordstrom's or whatever, is you're buying it essentially straight from the company. So I am a salesperson for this company, and I sell directly to the consumer. So that's direct selling. And then you have the other model, which is multi-level marketing, where not only are you selling, but you're building a sales team as well. Right. So that's kind of, that's the model. So it's like pretty much like any other business, you're selling product, right? And building a sales team. I knew nothing about it, honestly. Right. And all I knew is that it was founded by, so the company itself, it's skincare. So it was doctors who ran it. And I just knew of some doctors who were also consultants. That's all I knew. So I was like, well, they can do it. Right. If they can do it, then I can do it. It was one of those things. And I think being doctors, like I can figure it out. Right. I watch what they're doing and I can figure out and I can do it. And that was pretty much how I started. I didn't necessarily love skincare. I did not see myself as a salesperson. I just, again, see one, do one, teach one, right? Like just do it.
Right. So do you feel like you're, like you just had to be plugged into a system or create a system, or that you need to put a face and an image out there to be kind of that face for the company, or how did you perceive it?
That's exactly. So you're basically the marketing arm. So they have the products, they have, they have that whole, they build the website. So they have the tech, the product, the customer service, kind of all that stuff all built out. And then you are essentially their marketing arm. Right. Gotcha. So I started that 5 years ago. So it's kind of, back then it was hard to describe, but nowadays it's like, I'm like an influencer. I'm like their influencer, right? So they pay me to talk about their products. Like a lot of companies now do with influence, like affiliate marketing, like you see like Figs. I mean, Figs have, that's how they do it now. I don't know if you know that. They actually will kick back doctors to advertise Figs, and they all have their little affiliate codes. So a lot of companies do that now. So that's essentially what I am. I'm like their affiliate marketer.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so what's your biggest social media arm that you like to put your time into?
So I now, like Facebook was where it's all fluid, right? So Facebook was what I started with, and I have gotten pretty good at Instagram, and now we're like phasing into TikTok, And I think that's, and it's really interesting because it is a journey, right? So you start in one place, and then I do direct selling, and I think that's where it is. And now it's kind of gone into this social media realm where that's kind of taken on a life of its own as well. And so now, you know, I'm looking into like blogging or like kind of taking that on its own path as well. So it's just, it's been really fun and interesting just to see where things go.
Yeah. Is the social media avenues you take dictated by what you want to do, or is it kind of encouraged from the direct marketing company?
No, so that's totally me.
Okay.
So, I mean, kind of how direct marketing works is you market however you want to market, you know, so some people are more comfortable with emails or direct calling or like cold calling or going door to door. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways to market, like flyers, right? Like, you know, snail mail. I mean, there's however you want to do it, right? I chose social media, and that's the skill that I have honed. And, you know, it's kind of cool because I feel like with anything, you learn something and you build skills and then you take it on to your next,
yeah,
your next venture, right? And just you keep on growing and learning as you go.
Yeah, it's a good skill to have regardless. Hey, Kevin, do you have any questions before I ask you about TikTok?
Yeah, I do. Some questions and clarifications here. So just so the listeners can just make sure that everybody's up to speed on this. When you're talking direct sales with Rodan Fields, was it primarily commission based, or were they actually salary plus commission? And the reason okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's important for the listeners to understand there's all these different kind of sales techniques, and there's all these different type of sales companies. There's some that are better ones to look into than others, and that's a whole different conversation. But a commission-based selling program would be then that they're encouraging you, you're the whole marketing arm, and you don't get paid to do it, but you get paid more on the back end with the sales, which can, if you learn it well, it actually is it exactly turns out better for the whoever the salesperson would be. In this case, it's you as the physician. So
yes, that's exactly it. So it is commission based. So the more you sell, the more you make a set percentage, right? So then the more you sell, the more you get paid. You get, like I said, so multi-level marketing is you also get paid on your team. So there's a whole arm where I'm training a team, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm training, so everything I learn on TikTok or social media, I teach my team, and all the marketing skills that I've picked up, I teach my team, because the better they do, you know, then the better the whole team does. And so it's that whole concept.
Yeah. And the other part was interesting is for skincare particularly, and you kind of hit, you know, 5 years ago, Facebook was really for marketing anyway, a great time to be marketing on Facebook, because there wasn't a lot of people who knew how to use it. And then you're using a product that is pretty visually based on a media that people are using, a very visual media. So could you, and I want to tie this also with, I loved what you said, was you said, all these other people did all this stuff, but I'm a physician, I learned this stuff, I can learn this too. And can you talk about that decision-making process? Because sometimes I think, and we've talked about this on other episodes, physicians sell ourselves short. And we get in this place where we think we're trapped. You're in this practice, and then you have external things telling you this, that, and the other thing. And we think this is, maybe it's just because of the schooling and this huge big tunnel that we've gone through. But a lot of the stuff that's in this new sort of evolving world is learnable. So can you just talk about that journey? Like, how did you then decide to go into learn this art and craft of direct sales, in addition to, say, your first marketing channel, which sounds like Facebook?
Mm-hmm. I mean, my husband and I talk about this all the time. So, you know, what you were just saying, you know, Kevin, I think in medicine, I think the reason we are geared to feel this stuck is, you know, we know what the goal is, right? So ever since you're in high school or in college, like, you know what the goal is. The goal is, you know, your DO or your MD. You get to medical school and you graduate medical school, you go to residency and you get your degree, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's it. And as long as you have that goal in mind, then you do whatever it needs to take, right? You take a year off, you do some research, not everyone's journey is the same, but everyone has that goal, mm-hmm. right? Problem is once you finish training, then what? What's your goal? Right? You've achieved your goal. And I think that's the problem. I think a lot of people then at that point, they forget, there are goals. Like, what are your goals? Right? Like, yes, to have a family, but is it to spend time with them? Is it to, like what everyone's, is it to travel? Is it to see the world? Is it to, I don't know, right? Like build orphanages or whatever, what's that next goal? Yeah. And it could be anything. And I think a lot of people forget to set that next goal.
That's another great point. And this goes into this tunnel phenomenon is we get so inundated with the learning and, pre-med, medical school, residency, where you were just kind of nose to the grindstone. Mm-hmm. And with the absence of that goal, we forgot how to design our lives or to do intentional goal planning again. Yep. So, I mean, that's a super takeaway for you guys out there is if you're struggling, is to take a couple moments and actually define, and this is not an easy process a lot of the times, but it takes some significant time with however you want to do it, a pencil, walk, or whatever, to define what it is that you want in your career practice in life, and making sure that you define what it is that you don't want in your career practice in life. Because if nobody's doing this, someone's going to decide for you, like your partners.
Yeah. And I encourage, actually, I've done some of this exercise as well. Like, I mean, I encourage you to dream big, right? So sit down, pen and paper. If you had, and I think for us doctors, it's really easy to be like, well, I would love this, but, or logistically this would, like you talk yourself out of it before you even get there. Because for me, I'm like, I would love to go part-time, but, right? Because I was in the car crying, like I don't want to work full-time, but immediately like, oh, but I would take a pay cut. But what would they think of me? But, like all these buts already came in. And so, by the time I walked through the door, it was like, I was just going to take it, right? Even though I had hit the wall like 5 minutes earlier, right? So I think you sit down, forget logistics, you just write down what your dream, like anything, right? You just write down your dreams, because that's your dream, like you can't deny it. Yes, logistically might be tough. We'll figure it out, whatever, but just write it down. Like, what is your dream? You want to travel? You want, 10 kids, whatever. Well, I don't know what your dream is. You just put it out there. And then once you have that goal, just like that MD or D or whatever, then you figure it out, right? Then you figure it out. And that's kind of, I think that was the moment where I was like, I'm just going to do this company. I knew nothing about it, but I was going to figure it out, because I was going to take Fridays off, damn it. Like that was, and that was it. And I was just going to figure it out, like how to get there.
So did you intentionally then set that goal and define it then, or was it more that you had sort of stumbled into it and then kind of defined your ideal scenario later on? Like when you decided?
Yeah. So I think, right now it's so clear, but back then, it was still small. Like right now I tell you all to dream big, but then I was, I didn't know any of this stuff. So I was still like, oh, I'll make a few thousand, I'll, baby steps, and then I hit that goal within, I would say within the year, like hit that goal. And then you have the next goal, right? Like, oh, well, it'd be kind of cool to, go part-time, whatever. And like I said, in the meanwhile, I got my hours cut. Right. So then it became, and so that was a thought. So that was actually, now that we go deeper into it, that was actually my decision. I was like, do I send out my CV and pick up another part-time job as a physician? Or do I focus on my direct selling company and try to build that, right? To make up for that income, right? And that was a decision I made. I was like, okay, well, I can either do it in a clinic or I can do it from home, right? That was my decision. And so I decided, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm gonna go for this direct selling company. And I would say within another year, I had replaced my doctor's income. Like completely replaced, not just replaced that half. Like I had replaced it completely, which was unexpected. Like, I'm not going to say that, but yeah.
You'll take it.
I'll take it. And it would have never happened had I not just decided, because that was the moment too. I was like, well, what do I want? Do I want to go back to working full time, or do I want to actually spend time at home? Because that's what I wanted, right? That was what I wanted. And even though it was a very difficult decision and was scary, and I literally was freaking out, I mean, I just had to go for it because that's what I wanted, right? That's because when I looked at my life in 5-10 years, I'm like, well, where do I want to be? Well, I want to be home.
And the other part about that, which I would like to hear your feelings on, is you were still working part-time. So even if for whatever reason, your direct sales didn't work out for you, you may have lost a year or two, but as a physician, you have like a pretty good fail safe.
Yeah. I think all of us do, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I lost my job or whatever, I mean, I could pick up shifts here and there, like there's always a clinic or there's always a hospital that, someone's on maternity leave or someone's on vacation that they need help. And, we all have that, and that's what's nice about being a physician.
Yeah, I think the thing about being a physician, like that whole track you're talking about leading through all of our training, is that we're so used to structure and goal planning for, like, we're so used to just being in the destination and not really being present in the moment to really expand our minds to things outside of the goal that's ahead of us in this big, long tunnel. I can imagine, I think, I could speak for myself, but I imagine for you also that there was a sense of this autonomy and flexibility that you'd have being part-time and or not being tied to medicine in any kind of structure other than PRN or just, per diem kind of work that you're doing. Do you feel like you value that, the flexibility more than anything when you look back now with some more clarity?
Well, yeah. So now that is my most prized, like the flexibility is my most prized possession because I've seen it at work. There are times where my kid has a graduation that I totally forgot about,
Oops.
That never happens.
Friday off. Okay. Like I can't be there Friday. Or, and all jokes aside, when my grandmother died,
Yeah.
I legit thought about, okay, well, maybe I can still go to work and then go to the funeral later. I mean, what? No, I call and cancel clinic, right? Like, I mean, that flexibility that's been invaluable. And I think, and I think that's the other difficulty with you said that we value structure, we value security.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what was holding me back at the beginning. I was like, the money, the job, if I go per diem, then they could fire you or make you go part-time. That's exactly what happened to me. But, I'm willing to trade that because I can be at home. I can watch my kids grow up. I can homeschool them during a pandemic. It's
and that security in a lot of ways is a myth. And I think the COVID crisis has really revealed that, where it and historically it may have been true that physicians had very stable careers. And I don't want to scare people because there are always options as a physician. They just may not be the security of one location for the rest of your life, and that practice environment has changed greatly.
Yes.
So, we love security, but it's really kind of a big myth now more than ever.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Well, I've been waiting for the question. As far as
You've been very patient.
Yeah. No, I figured I'd leave it to the end, but how would you describe like maybe if you had like 2 or 3 little nuggets or pearls about TikTok, and or how it's best used or for what target audience? Anything you have to say about TikTok?
Well, TikTok, it's changing. I mean, just like with, the world in general, I think TikTok is changing. When I started a few months ago, TikTok was a very young platform. And I would say a lot of kids, right? I think with the pandemic and a lot of people having more free time and, just losing their jobs, unfortunately, the demographic of TikTok has really shifted so that I think it's very much like Instagram now. So if you have a podcast or a blog or a company or whatever, I mean, TikTok is a great platform to be using to get yourself out there.
And would you say, obviously I have yet to have an account yet, but obviously I need to try to check it out. Is there like there's like a certain number of seconds you can have on TikTok and they're mainly videos, or?
Yeah, they are 100% videos. So, I mean, and I think the few reasons why TikTok has really taken off, it is video. Okay. And Facebook and Instagram, if you read any of their like kind of analytics and whatever, video on Instagram, video on Facebook, they always tend to do better. That's what the algorithms are pushing. Like that's, and it's because that's what people watch, right? So instead of scrolling through a picture, they're going to stop and watch a video, right? So a video is always going to be, we said video is king, right? On Instagram and Facebook. And so TikTok is all video, 100% video, right? And so they're still trying to figure out the algorithm. Like I can literally see things changing on the app, but because it's all video, there's so many people on it. Like I think their numbers like doubled or tripled over the last just couple months. It's kind of really, really crazy, the people who are on it. So they're a majority, I think they can be up to a minute, but in general, it's 15-second clips, right? And so it's video. So that's, I think, one reason why it does really well. I think actually, because I think what's going on with Instagram and Facebook and why a lot of people are shifting is a lot of it, you can tell it's the social media filter, right? Where pictures are beautiful, like, everything's edited, everyone, and you're kind of used to that. Like Instagram, it's like, and it's a beautiful feed. Everything's color coordinated. It's all pink. Like it's amazing. TikTok is pretty raw. I mean, it's pretty funny. Like stuff that is posted, like you can tell they took it in one take and it's amazing and it's hilarious, And so I think that's why people, because it's real, right? People feel like it's more authentic, on TikTok. So I think that's part of the reason why people really like it. And then as a content creator, for me, I love TikTok because the videos that you make on TikTok are now yours. So everything that I create on TikTok, a file gets saved on my phone, and then I can now upload it to Instagram or my blog or even YouTube or Facebook. And this one piece of video content is now multitasking.
Right.
Which that was the part that I really loved about it.
I did not know that last piece, but repurposing your content is king also.
Making it easy for you to do so. But
yeah.
So you kind of touched on this a little bit, that TikTok is this raw kind of new platform, kind of up and coming. What I'm kind of interested in is, like, I think back to when Facebook first came out, and at least for me, and I think, what was it, 2007, 2008, and it was all about connection. Like, I remember the excitement about connecting with people back then. Now you're like, I don't want to talk to this person. But back then it was like, oh my God, I was in second grade with you, how cool is this? So I'm kind of curious then, what's the overall kind of zeitgeist or feeling when it comes to TikTok? What is it that you see it being? Like, what's the coreness to it? If it's not connection, is it?
Yeah, it's not so much connection. So Facebook, I still think is the best for connection, right? Because Facebook's really smart because they see all these other platforms coming out and they're now pushing their groups, right? Which I still like. That's kind of, I think, where Facebook is going, where you're going to actually find groups of people who are like you. So that's smart on Facebook's part, because that's what they offer that none of the other platforms offer. TikTok, I think right now the way it is, because they're starting to monetize and kind of like how Instagram is. I think right now, because it is so simple, it really is just about having fun. And I think that's what people want and need right now, and I think that's why maybe with the pandemic, it's really just for fun, they're going to eventually start monetizing and start giving all these other little features, that's going to come. But right now, I think it's just fun.
And that presents a great opportunity then for physicians. If you're sort of struggling and figuring out what you want to do, and you're like, well, I just want another outlet for something. That sounds to me then TikTok's an ideal platform for it, because it's not serious. You can go out and you can experiment. You can sort of find your voice. You can find your interests and post about them, and then just see what's resonating with the people clicking through their feeds, looking at your 15-second video. So very, very intriguing. My kid's TikTok.
What's really interesting though, if you go in, there are a lot of doctors and, like Gary Vee is on TikTok. I don't know if you know who Gary Vee is. Yeah. There are a lot of, people are starting to get on there and they're starting to like really use their voices. And so I have a lot of doctor friends who started on TikTok and they're just surprised because again, it started off as a younger demographic. And so there are a lot of like pre-meds and there are a lot of like, med students that are on there and they're asking questions. They're asking to be mentored. It's really crazy. It's different, you know? And so they've built that whole platform of like not coaching, but like pre-med counseling, or, you know, like that whole thing, which is really, really interesting. And yeah, and that's just like you said, they just started and it was just kind of where it went, you know? But yeah, it's a fun platform.
So does it let you, like, if you have a little quick video, of course, I probably know this once I start playing with that, but is it have like a way to click on to a link to what you're doing, or
yeah.
is it...
So TikTok, yes. So I know with like Facebook, you can put links. Instagram, it's harder to put links, but on TikTok there is. So you can actually link your Instagram account, you can link your YouTube channel, and they allow you to link a website. So it's a very good place to market, actually.
Oh, that's perfect. Very good. Kevin, any other questions?
No, I just pulled up TikTok and I'm seeing Dr. Chan's channel here, and I was like, oh, this looks very interesting. I see your eyeballs, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And the thing is, there's probably another episode that anyone that's on social media like yourself, we could do on that delicate balance between professionalism, fun, and education, and all that too.
Yes, that's a whole other
another ball game.
And I think that's an important topic on that is, and maybe would be irresponsible to not end on that, because you want people to share, but at the same time, just the realization that whatever you publish out there is going to be out there forever,
everywhere.
So I would, if I don't, not to pull too much time here, but I would really kind of briefly like to hear, how do you balance that with the recognition to how do you be fun, how do you be spontaneous, how do you be authentic, while recognizing that whatever you put out there is going to be out there forever?
Yeah. So I guess I haven't really thought about this, but I do, before I post, I mean, there's some things I don't post. Okay. You know, like I try not to, and I know this is like silly, but like an example, like I try not to post anything with cussing in it. That's just, you know, sometimes it's hard with the music nowadays, but you know, I try really hard, or nothing sexual, like whatever, you know, and it's because like, will I be embarrassed of this in 5-10 years? Or I guess a good filter would be, I don't know, would I be okay with my resident seeing this? Right? Like if my resident, or would I be okay with my I mean, I'm never okay with my old attendings seeing any of my, but you know, how about one of my cool attendings? I don't know. But you know, you kind of go through that filter. Like, would I be okay with a colleague seeing this?
Right.
And so there's some stuff that, you know, I am dancing, you know, and sometimes you have to own it, right? Like you kind of have to be, and so I do have maybe a higher tolerance for that stuff, but yeah, that's probably the filter I would, you know, is this too highly political, or is you know, is it going to upset somebody, or, you know, is this factually correct? Like I would just, you know, like, so those things do go through my head, definitely.
Yeah, and it sounds common sense, but it's just a simple filter to use.
Yes.
You know, just to start with, who's someone I respect? Would I be comfortable with them seeing this? And then, you know, and it's factually correct. That's anything. And I'm just saying that because sometimes people are like, they make this process so difficult. Like the buts come in, but that, you know, blah, 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 blah. Will this impact whatever? And it doesn't have to be that complex, but you do just have to have a little bit.
And I think you also have to own it too, because for me, I think people could say, oh, well, so I mean, so I can just tell you, the things I post are, I do post educational things about ophthalmology, about just kind of the medical journey, but I also do post fashion stuff. I love clothing, you know, and fashion. I do post dancing videos on TikTok because that's what TikTok does. And so am I okay with showing that stuff? Yeah. I mean, you could be embarrassed about your dancing. I could be shy about things I wear and purchase, but you know what, you kind of have to, anything you do, you have to embrace it, right? That is who I am. This is authentically me. And if you appreciate it, awesome. If you don't, then we probably wouldn't be friends. So, you know, and as long as I'm okay with that, then, you know, there is a level of confidence there.
Yeah. And I think there's, and my husband and I have talked about this too, is that when you put yourself out there on social media, period, end of story, you're going to have some critics. whether they're really vocal or not, or may say things in their own little circles. And there could be people that just, they don't get it. They're still in their very rigid kind of thinking, and it's hard for them to imagine outside that traditional norm from the past of what a physician should be. But I think as long as you're respecting patient privacy and you're not, doing some silly videos with the patient there in it, and like, there's professional ways of showing pieces of surgery that they've consented and all that stuff. But there's definitely some outliers that don't know how to utilize a reasonable common sense filter. But I am very excited to hear about the dancing stuff, because I love to dance. I'm going to have to check you out on your...
you text me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And I mean, and just to go along with that, Melissa, like for every, and I think it's really easy to dwell on the negativity. Like, one person says one bad thing and you're like, ugh, it's in your head all week. Yeah. But for every one bad thing, I have 5, 6, 7, 10 positive things, and that's kind of what I focus on, right? If this is helping somebody, if this is, I get messages all the time, like I think what people like seeing me is like, yes, you can be a doctor, but you can be other things, right? And I think for a lot of these young, pre-meds or physicians, they're feeling stuck, right? And they're like, oh, like, and to see someone who is like, oh, well, actually she's able to do it, then why can't I, right? And so I get these messages all the time. And so that negates any negativity that, that's worth it.
You're helping redefine the norm. Yeah, I think.
One TikTok at a time.
That's right.
There's a slogan right there, helping define the norm. One TikTok. I like that. That's awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Vicki, but thank you so much for coming on, sharing your journey with us, giving some really interesting perspectives. And again, I hope people kind of homing in onto this is these challenges you thought were such a big deal, and they were a big deal at the time, but they ended up to be such a blessing in a lot of ways and provided these external opportunities. So thank you so much. Thank you for educating us ignoramuses on the TikTok experience.
Thank
here.
you for having me.
I look forward to seeing some dancing videos.
From Melissa, because we're going to talk about how to do it.
Melissa.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Melissa dances, so that she'll get on that platform and never come off. So
I know, watch out. That'll be awesome.
But thank you so much for coming on the Change Physician podcast. Everybody else out there, thanks for joining us. Hope you learned some really interesting points and found the courage to change your own physician journey. And until next time, stay well.